I'm going to come back to NATO. I think what Johnson has said is really important and fascinating that Ian Duncan Smith supports it. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've been at odds with almost the entirety of the establishment on this for many, many years. In 2014, the democratically elected leader of Ukraine was brought down by the Orange Revolution, people standing in the square in Kiev waving European Union flags. It was clear we wanted to expand eastwards, not just the EU, but NATO as well. I felt that was a strategic mistake. I said in the parliamentary chamber in 2014 there would be a war in Ukraine. They hated me for it then, they hate me for it now. That's how I feel about this. Well, I'm joined by communications consultant for Special Project Partners, former naval officer James Gator. James, you know, we've, as a country, believed in NATO since the late 1940s, and I think with very good reason. It's been a pretty remarkable organisation, but circumstances change. You know my position on this.
Very well.
And you may well disagree with it, I don't know. But here's the point. At a moment when we've got a war going on in Ukraine that frankly looks a bit like 1917, with trenches, artillery bombardments, you know, infantry approaches over open ground, the prospect of a spring offensive, I think, coming from the Russians, and that's why the Ukrainians want tanks, and I understand it from their point of view. But with Putin, and with the fact he's dared to talk about nuclear weapons, does it make sense for a former foreign secretary and a former prime minister? I mean, strategically, does it make sense for us at this moment to talk about Ukraine joining NATO?
Well, Nigel, I understand your position, but fundamentally, it's arguable that this war could only ever have started as it fell in the grey zone, if you wish, between Ukraine being a member of NATO and not a member of NATO. I think, and I would argue that Boris Johnson thinks, that this is about changing public perceptions. It's not about cold, hard facts about joining. Let's face it, joining NATO is going to be an extended process. It's going to take an awfully long time. But it's about the perception. It's about our position as a nation state and what we think to be acceptable in the future. As your earlier guests pointed out, the fact is that joining now is inconceivable. I don't believe that's what Boris Johnson said. Joining now would mean, yes, you would be right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's actually what's being suggested.
OK, but I mean, my reason, one of my main reasons for not wanting this eastward expansion was I felt it would give Putin a casus belli. He could say to the Russian people, look, they're surrounding us, they're threatening us, to give him a reason where they would back him in a military endeavour such as this. That was the point that I was making. Surely, even if the suggestion that this membership's down the road, I mean, isn't this a dangerous time?
Nigel, NATO is a defensive organisation, and what better form of defence than to protect ourselves from attack? The fact of the matter is that if Ukraine had been on a closer path to joining NATO, Putin would very likely have thought twice about his invasion. Now, really, is this about giving Putin a casus belli? The fact is that we need to get behind the Ukrainians as much as possible, not only protect them, but to protect ourselves.
Is this war winnable for Ukraine?
With enough resources, yes. In the last half an hour, it's been reported by Der Spiegel that tanks are going to be sent, or Leopard 2s are going to be sent. Another company, that's 28 tanks in total with the Challenger 2s. They need all the tanks they can get, and they need them to protect the rest of Europe.